Hello, guys, and welcome back. I have a question for you. But before I ask you that question, I'm going to give you a story, true story of something that happened years ago. And there was this man, and he's living out in Africa, and he owns this large parcel of land. As he's there working his land, he watches his friends start to sell their lots and their parcels of lands in order to go look for diamonds, because there's a big diamond craze going on and they're out there looking for diamonds. And so they sell their land and they're going around and they buy another piece of land and so on and so forth. And some are, finding some diamonds a little bit here and there. And Africa is rich in diamonds. And so after a while, he's thinking about it. He's watching him do it. He finally musters up the courage to go do it himself. And he sells his piece of land. He's going out and buying land, digging, selling it, buying land, digging, selling it, and he doesn't really get any. No, there's no luck for him. And he eventually just fades out, passes away, and that was it. Meanwhile, back at his original piece of land that he had before he sold it, the original one, there's a guy now that had bought it, and he's living there, and he's enjoying his new home, and one of his friends comes over, and he walks into the house, and he's checking out the house, and he walks over to the fireplace, and on top of the mantle, on top of the fireplace, there's this huge boulder, and a good sized rock. And his friend picks it up and looks at it, and he almost passes out. And he says, "Do you know what this is?" And the owner of the house, his friend, says, "No." He says, "Why?" He goes, "This is a diamond." And he goes, "Really?" He says, "I have a riverbed full of them." The guy that sold the land sold his acres of diamonds in order to go look from somewhere else. Now imagine if he would have been able to recognize what he had. He went looking for something and didn't even recognize it. So he sold it. And I want you to think about how that applies to you. We'll be right back. Now, before I ask you the question that I was going to ask you, let me give you another one. There's this guy, and he's out in Texas, and he has another true story. Some of the details of the land and the location of the person's name may be different, but paraphrasing. He is out in Texas, and he's working his farm, and he pretty much lives a meager life. He's barely getting by. He barely makes enough and to get by and just to keep sustain his farm and his animals. And so all day long, he's wishing that he could just live a different life. He's always wondering how he could get by, what he could do, what different things he could do to make a better life for himself. One day, there's this river, this little stream that's flowing through his land, and all the animals come and drink from it. The cows drink from it, the horses drink from it, the ducks, everything drinks from that little stream. And one day, scum starts to come up through the stream. And the animals go ahead and they just push the scum aside and drink from the clean water, cool water underneath. He even pushes the scum aside and takes water from it to go fill the troughs and stuff for the pigs and whatnot. One day, he sees three guys walking down one of the roads next to his farm. And they stop at the end of the stream and they fill a canteen. And he doesn't really think anything of it. They leave. And about a month or so later, he gets this huge offer for his farm. And seeing how he would never be able to make that money, it was like 3-4 times the value of the farm. So he sells it right away. He moves to Canada and buys another farm between the farm of his father and his brother. So now they're all three together in Canada, and he's working the farm. Meanwhile, the scum was oil, and it was one of the richer lots in the land with oil. He didn't get word. He got word of it a lot later, and he found out that he was always looking for something, and there it was. And he sold it 4 times the amount of the farm, but he never reaped it because he didn't know what he was looking for. And the question for you is, what are you looking for? Or are you looking for anything? Because sometimes what happens with people is they just accept life the way it is. See, this farmer accepted life the way it is. So when he sold his farm, he went and he bought another one. He saw a little break. He knew what he wanted, but he never looked to see where it would be at. He didn't even recognize it. Didn't even question why that was. And the reason I ask this is because most of us don't question it either. Beyond the acres of diamonds and beyond that oil field, you have a greater wealth locked up inside of you. Now, we don't come to understand that. See, if you listen to the story of the prodigal son, the parable of the prodigal son, one son asks for his portion of inheritance, and then he goes out and he spends it on whatever. Sometimes we say hookers and the rest, and he's out there and he burns it, right? He's living this really unfruitful life. And after a while, he goes broke and he realizes that how he's going to earn money, and then he sees himself working really hard, and he realizes that the servants in his father's house still live better than he does. So he goes back to his father's house, and I'm going to ask him if I can just live as one of his servants, and then I'll be better off. And he's kind of learned a lesson there. The funny part about it is a lot of believers haven't done that. A lot of believers are in the place working something they really don't like. They're watching where it's at, and they make every excuse for being where they're at. Now, some of you might want to turn this off right now because that affects you in here, but you should listen. We start to make reasons why it's good for us to be here. We start looking at the great. It's always great. It's always good to be grateful for the things that we have, but you should never be satisfied. The reason I say that is because dissatisfied is a creative state. You're created in the image and the likeness of God. So we are also creators, but we don't. We create our lives. If you look around you, that's why everyone has a different way of life. We are all creating our own lives based upon the beliefs that we have inside. If most people want to earn more money, they try to do it from wherever in the confines of wherever they're at. Most people that want to earn more money and they're already don't want to venture off into anything else they usually turn to the stock market. There they can buy here and sell there, and they'll make some money, and maybe they'll make a couple $100 every now and then, and they just continue to pull in a little bit, but allows them to stay right where they're at. Sure, they're risking some money, but they're not risking giving up what they have, the fears that they have to go beyond it. And some may say it's not fear. You sure? Because usually fear keeps you locked up in a place. The unknown keeps you locked. Fear of the unknown keeps you locked up in a certain place. Now, back to the story of the prodigal son. He goes back. He arrives, and his father is like, he sees him coming away, and he says, prepare the calf, and he's going to make this feast for his son returning. And his other sons there, he says, well, you never make a feast for me or my friends so that we can be merry. And he says, yeah, but this son, he was lost, and now he's found. The son that's been at home the whole time, he's been at home the whole time. And his father says to him, you've been with me this whole time. What's mine is yours. Now, there's a lot of people that have been going to church a whole long time, and they've never realized that God doesn't need anything that's on this planet. He made it for our purpose, for our development, for our fulfillment, for the unfolding of who he made us to be. There we are. We're stuck in that little place where we justify why we are where we're at. Really, a prison of mentality. And you'll watch this because someone's car will break down. Something will go wrong in their house and they have to fix it. And they're hoping they have enough money to cover the bill. That's the son that left the house that's trying to count his money. He's trying to fit in whatever he has to whatever he's now earning because he doesn't have the wealth that he had when he was at his father's. That might be you. That probably is most people. He didn't have the wealth that he had when he was at his father's house. Some of us, we don't even know what it's ever been like to be at our father's house and experience that type of wealth. Think about that. We're like over here not even thinking about the fact that we could go back to our father's house and start to experience these type of things. Where have we been at? The other brother at home, he's there, and if something breaks down, his father takes care of it. But he never realize the whole entire time there that he had access to these things. And a lot of these things there were for his benefit. They're for our benefit. They're exactly for our benefit. People are out here like people are making things and discovering things that God never even knew about or had planned. They're exactly everything here on this planet is for our benefit. You know, fear is a thing that can be described by a lot of people a lot of different ways. But when we're afraid, when we don't move beyond, when we stay, when we have every excuse and every reason not to do, and even when we know what to do, we don't do it. We just sit there. Why? The reason is it has to move into our spirit being. And we don't differentiate between spirit and a carnal mind. And it really is that your conscious mind shifts between spirit and the flesh. And most of the time it resides in the flesh, which is why we rationalize things. See, faith sees where you're going. And that's true. It's where you're going. Ask and you shall receive. There's no limitation on the ask. You can never ask for too much. It's not like if you relate on the carnal mind, you relate God to your flesh father, then you're going to have that perception. But if you relate God to the source of all good and unlimitedness, then you can never ask for too much. So ask and you shall receive. When do you receive it? Immediately. Where did it come? In spirit. You can't see it. Right. Praying in spirit doesn't mean in tongues. But because we don't understand spirit, that's what we think it means. We'll do another topic on that. That should have its own topic. Needless to say, you've already received it. Faith is going to carry me to the end, knowing that I have it, knowing that I've already obtained it. It's equal to the same as faith should be its own topic. I should give it own talk on faith. But faith really is like you've watched the end of the story. And now you're going to go back and read the book from the beginning. You know how it ends. Well, faith is that way because it carries you beyond. And it carries you beyond any obstacle along the way, knowing the end, knowing the exact end. So I asked the question, have you noticed the wealth that God has given you? Have you noticed what God has put there? Now, sometimes people think, well, they only think of the avenue is only through money. And that's incorrect. God has all kinds of avenues of making what you think is impossible possible. Don't try to limit God to just, it has to be through money. There's all ways that your good that you ask for can be coming to you. And if you limit yourself, you'll stay in the same spot. You'll make excuses for being in the same place. You watch it all the time. I watch it all the time. I worked in a place where there's over 5,000 employees. There's job positions open all over the place, different scales of money from lower money, just starting wages, all the way up to hundreds of thousands. And you watch the same person stay in the same spot. And they'll just tell you about their struggles financially and what's going on. And, I know God can do it. I know I have faith in God. Yeah, you have faith in God. But faith is the substance of things hoped for. The evidence of things yet not manifested, yet not seen, right? And so I know where I'm going. I see it. I see the end. Most people aren't even seeing the end. They have no image of where they're going. Just like the guy that had no image of what the diamonds look like, and the other guy had no idea why there was scum in the water. Right? There's no image in the mind of where they're going and what they're looking for. So how do they know where they started and where they're ending? And the funny thing is it never ends. Once you arrive there, you'll see where else. And every time it is a growing process. You're losing yourself, your limited thinking, your limited ideas, and you're moving into liberty so that the spirit that is within you can flow through to the outside. Well, at a certain point, you won't have a need to just hold on to things. Right now, we buy something. When we're limited, we buy something and then we take really good care of it. And we watch it and, sometimes we don't want to give it away. But if we get something better, we might give it away or we sell it, right? Well, when you start moving into this, you'll start to find out that you can give this away and there's something else just comes back that's even bigger and better. And it just always happens. There's a flow. And maybe some of you have recognized some of that in your life, but you haven't recognized it to this point because most of us don't. Most of us just justify where we're at why we're there, and how much we like it. And that's not usually the way it is, because there is so many places to grow. It's like being in the lobby of a hotel and just saying this is good enough, and you never never see another floor. Every floor, subsequent floor above it is even a different vantage point. It's another place. It's a different view. It's a different perception. And we have to learn to find the perceptions that benefit us, even in a bad situation. In the most worst situations, when it happens, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sit back, stay calm. That's the first part. Sit back, stay calm. Number 2, harvest all the good. Then release it, release the situation, and forgive all the rest. And you'll start growing from this. You'll start to know these things. You'll start to grow from this. Anyways, I have a new book released, and you'll learn some of these things, and you really learn a different perception, how to see things differently, how to start to learn and unlock the things that you have inside you. The videos will be in here. The books are behind me on the wall, but the links will be here. And one is Let the Answer Sink In, and the other one is The Believer's Guide to Christ in You Manifested. Now, it's not going to get you moving like Christ tomorrow, or even by the end of maybe even by the end of this year. You're going to start taking steps towards it. You're going to start taking steps towards being there. You're going to start to see the things that you didn't see before. Both of these books, one really kind of flows right into the other. We need that if we're gonna start to function properly the way God made us to function in this world during these times. Then this is necessary. All right. Anyways, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Share this video. Share it with your friends, your family that needs to hear it, because we all need. I've looked for years. I spent a lot of my life looking for this type of information, looking for something different that I couldn't get at church, that I couldn't get just alone by my perception of when I read the Bible, And I got pieces, I got things, and it helped me where I was at. But when I found this information, because I was always looking, I realized everything that I missed. But now, with the information that I understand, my understanding now, and what I have in my years of studying the Word of God, I can put those together and I can see it right away, right around me, and I can start making changes that are tangible. They are real changes. You'll know them by their fruit, and that's exactly what it is. It's a visible fruit that other people can see. I mean, if a lemon tree and an orange tree didn't produce an orange and a yellow fruit, then we wouldn't be able to tell them apart. If the fruit was just on the inside, can you imagine how much trees we'd have to open up to find out what kind of tree it was? That would be ridiculous. I have to split it right down the middle to see if it has an orange inside or a lemon inside. No. The fruit is an outside visible result of what is going on the inside of what that person is. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Anyways, subscribe, like, share. For all of those watching on their cell phones, watching at home, God bless. I will see you next time.